The first thing people noticed about Nathaniel Cole was how little time he wasted. Every word was precise, his movements clipped, deliberate. At 38, he had built one of the fastest-growing venture capital firms in New York from the ground up. He was known for answering emails at 4:45 a.m., hosting pitch meetings from his treadmill, and leaving boardrooms with the final decision already made. He didn't slow down, not for traffic, not for small talk, not even for grief. Not even when his wife, Amelia, passed away 2 years ago. Now he was a single father to 5-year-old Zoe, a willful, wild-hearted girl who spoke in questions and rarely sat still. She was everything Nathaniel wasn't: chaotic, emotional, unapologetically curious. He loved her with a panic he didn't quite know how to express, and he structured their life like a fortress to protect her from what he feared most: the uncontrollable. It was a Thursday morning when everything began to unravel. Nathaniel was halfway out the door, blazer on one shoulder, phone clutched to his ear with one hand and a protein bar in the other, when Zoe refused to put on her shoes. "I want the sparkly ones," she announced from the hallway, her backpack dragging on the floor. "They don't have proper soles for rain," he said, glancing at the darkened sky outside. "But Mommy bought them for me," she added quietly. He stilled, the familiar ache rising in his throat. "Zoe," he said more gently, crouching to her level, "we'll keep them in your bag for after school, deal?" She didn't answer, just stared up at him with eyes so much like Amelia's it almost broke him. He reached for his phone and clicked to record a voice memo for Jenny, the college sophomore who watched Zoe in the afternoons. "Hey Jenny, quick update. Zoe, bringing those glitter shoes in her bag. Please let her change into them after preschool if the weather clears. She mentioned her mom gave them to her and I. Yeah, just be mindful of that, okay? Oh, and Zoe, been a little clingy lately, so maybe sit with her during snack time if you can. Thanks." He hit send without checking. It was only when he stepped into the elevator and saw the name on the delivered to line that his stomach dropped. Emily Hart. He hadn't seen her name in over a decade, hadn't spoken to her in even longer, but there it was, plain and unmistakable: Emily Hart. He tapped the contact. Sure enough, her number was still saved with the same faded college photo of them in Central Park. She had tucked a daisy behind her ear that day, he remembered. Emily wasn't Jenny. Emily was his college sweetheart, the one who sat with him during his mother's funeral sophomore year, the one who believed in his big dreams before they had names, the one who left when he chose ambition over everything else. And now she had a voice memo, that voice memo, about Zoe, about Amelia. He swore softly under his breath as the elevator dinged, and a Wall Street executive stepped in, cheerful and oblivious. Nathaniel opened his messages. No response, no typing dots. Maybe she'd changed her number. Maybe she didn't use that account anymore. Maybe. Then 3 words blinked into the screen. "Got your message." That was it. He stared at the reply, heart hammering. There was nothing in the tone. No punctuation, no warmth, no sarcasm. Just a quiet acknowledgement dropped into his morning like a lit match. The past stirred like dust. Nathaniel arrived at the office distracted. His assistant noticed but didn't comment, used to his silences. He reviewed term sheets, made decisions, but his mind kept flicking back to her, to Emily. What did she think, hearing his voice again after so long, hearing about Zoe, hearing that he had a daughter who missed her mother? What had she heard in the pauses? That night after Zoe was in bed and the house had gone quiet, he poured a drink he wouldn't finish and sat at the dining table staring at his phone. He typed and deleted 4 different messages. Ignore that message, wrong person. To Kurt. Hey, long time, that was meant for someone else. Too casual. Sorry, I didn't mean to send that to you. How are you? Too open. He finally sent nothing at all. Instead, he opened her profile. She still had the same number, still used the same email, and somehow her picture was still her. Maybe a little older, maybe her hair was shorter, but it was her. That expression that always made him slow down, that reminded him of things he no longer let himself want. The next morning, he opened his phone to a new message. "I hope Zoe got to wear her sparkly shoes." Nathaniel didn't respond right away. He stared at the message, reread it slowly, let it linger longer than it should have. There was something disarming about the way Emily remembered the name. Zoe, as if she'd tucked it somewhere safe in just those few seconds of his voice. No questions, no assumptions, just a small kindness. He put the phone down and stood. The house was still and dark, except for the faint hum of the fridge and the softer breathing from Zoe's room down the hall. He walked toward her door and opened it an inch. She kicked off the covers again. Her sparkly shoes were on the floor beside her dresser, a dull glint catching the moonlight. He watched her sleep, forehead slightly furrowed, a trace of her mother in every small expression. She always looked like she was in the middle of dreaming something big. Nathaniel returned to the kitchen and picked up his phone again. "She did, thank you," he hit send. Then added after a moment, "I didn't realize I still had your number." This time her reply came quickly. "I figured that, but I listened anyway. I'm glad I did." He didn't know what to do with that, with the quiet honesty of it. Emily had always been like that, someone who didn't flinch from emotion, someone who looked right at the thing most people turned from. He wasn't sure if she was offering something now, or simply acknowledging the shared thread of a memory. Zoe stirred early that morning, crawling into his bed with cold feet and a tangle of questions. She asked him why stars looked like glitter and why bananas had strings and if they could get a cat. "Maybe a dog," he replied, still half asleep. "I want a cat named Doctor," she announced. He smiled against the pillow, the edge of his mind still thinking about Emily's voice, though he hadn't heard it, just read it. He wondered where she was living now, if she was still working in education like she'd wanted to back in undergrad. She always talked about building things that didn't make money but made meaning. Nathaniel checked her profile again on his break between meetings. She wasn't on social media much, but a few clicks led him to a professional bio, Emily Hart, MED, Family Transitions Specialist. She ran workshops for single parents, helped schools design programs for children navigating loss and divorce. He leaned back in his chair, surprised by the way that landed. It made sense. Of course she'd found a way to turn empathy into work, to help kids like Zoe, parents like him. He didn't realize he'd saved the page until his assistant knocked gently and reminded him his client from Berlin was on hold. That evening he found himself making Zoe pancakes for dinner, not the protein kind, but the real ones, with too much syrup and blueberries mashed into the batter. She beamed at him like he'd told her they were flying to the moon. "I want to make a birthday card for Mommy," she said while chewing. "Her birthday's not for a few months." "I know, but I might forget later. I have a lot of ideas now." He nodded slowly. "Okay, we'll make one this weekend." She tilted her head. "Do you think she'll see it?" Nathaniel didn't answer right away. "I think she'll feel it somehow." Later that night, after Zoe had drawn 3 crayon rainbows and fallen asleep on the rug, he picked up his phone and typed again. "I saw your website. You're helping people like me now, huh?" Emily responded within the hour. "I guess I am, but it's usually the kids who help me more than the other way around. They don't try to hide what hurts, it's refreshing." He typed, then deleted, then typed again. "Zoe like that. She talks about her mom like she's still in the next room." Emily replied, "That's good, that's healthy. Most adults can't even name what they miss." Nathaniel didn't know what prompted it exactly. Maybe the silence of the room, maybe the soft memory of Amelia's handwriting on Zoe's baby blanket. But he sent another message before he could stop himself. "I wasn't good at staying, you knew that back then. Still true, I guess." A longer pause. Then, "You stayed with your daughter, that counts." That night Nathaniel didn't sleep much. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the city pulsing faintly beyond the windows. In his mind he kept replaying college years like flickers of old film. A bench outside their campus library where he once kissed Emily in the middle of a snowfall. A night they stayed up talking until the sun came up, arguing about what made a life meaningful. He had been so sure then, so convinced that success was the same thing as purpose. And when Emily left after graduation to work for a nonprofit in Vermont while he chased an unpaid internship on Wall Street, they never quite reconnected. Until now. by accident through the voice of his daughter, through a message meant for someone else. The next weekend, Zoe made a card with tiny stickers and glitter tape. She asked him to write a note in it. "You have better spelling," she said matter-of-factly. He knelt beside her at the coffee table. What should it say? Zoe scrunched her nose. "Dear Mommy, I miss you. I wish I could tell you about my shoes. Daddy makes weird pancakes. I love you." Nathaniel's hand hesitated only a moment before he wrote it exactly as she said, every word. When he finished, he took a picture of the card. Then, on impulse, he sent it to Emily. No caption, just the image. She responded later that evening. "Tell her it's beautiful, and that I think her mom would love those sparkles." He did. And for the first time in a long time, something inside him loosened. Not quite healed, but loosened enough to wonder what might come next. Zoe developed a habit that week, waiting until Nathaniel was lacing his shoes in the morning before casually delivering some emotional ambush. "Daddy, do butterflies die when they get tired?" He blinked at her from the foyer, tie half-dyed. "What?" "Because I saw one at school and it wasn't flying. It was just lying on the ground, not moving. Do they fall asleep or do they die?" He crouched, buying time. Sometimes they rest, and sometimes they're done flying. She tilted her head, unconvinced. "I think that one died, but maybe it wasn't scared. Maybe it knew it had done enough flying." Nathaniel didn't know where she came up with this stuff, but he felt the words stay with him all the way through the elevator ride, the rush-hour traffic, the morning meeting with shareholders that somehow felt less urgent than a butterfly's quiet exit. That evening, he texted Emily again. Zoe asked if butterflies die when they're tired. Her reply came not long after. "Tell her they never die tired, just finished." He smiled down at the screen, thumb brushing his jaw, then added, "How do you know the right thing to say?" "I don't, I just stopped trying to say the adult thing. That's where we all go wrong." He didn't reply right away, didn't need to. There was something in the space between their messages now, open but unpressured. A thread, yes, but not tight, not needy, just present. Later that week, his firm threw an event for a new round of investors. Nathaniel stood in a sea of tailored suits and controlled smiles, glass in hand, fielding congratulations with polite detachment. The room hummed with ambition and curated charm, but he found himself thinking about Zoe's questions, about pancakes and glitter shoes and drawings taped to the fridge. When he slipped away early, no one noticed. Zoe was already asleep by the time he got home, sprawled in the center of his bed like she owned the world. He didn't move her, just lay beside her and exhaled, letting the silence of the room press down like a warm weight. The next morning, he sent Emily a voice message, this time on purpose. "Hey, so I don't know if this is weird, but I haven't talked like that to anyone in a while, about Zoe, or Amelia, or just the kind of stuff that doesn't fit in spreadsheets. You don't have to reply, I just wanted to say thanks." It took her 3 days to respond, 3 quiet, humbling days. When her reply came, it was a voice memo, too. "Nathaniel, I didn't know if I should say anything either. I wasn't expecting your message. I wasn't expecting any of this, but it's not weird, it's human, and we don't get enough chances to be that anymore." Her voice hadn't changed, or maybe it had, but the way it moved through him hadn't. Low and clear, thoughtful. She always had a pause before important words, like she was checking in with herself first, like she meant every syllable. Zoe had a playdate that Saturday. Nathaniel stayed nearby, sipping lukewarm coffee on a park bench while the kids shrieked and climbed. Across from him, a father yelled half-heartedly into a phone while scrolling, barely noticing when his toddler tried to feed a squirrel a goldfish cracker. Nathaniel watched it all, unsure where he fit in. Too formal for the playground dads, too altered by fatherhood to relate to his work circle anymore. He pulled out his phone, thumb hesitating, then typed, "You still in New York?" Her reply was simple. "Not far, I moved back 2 years ago, family stuff, why?" He didn't answer right away. Zoe ran up, cheeks flushed, hair wild, holding a handful of dandelions. "Daddy, these are for Amelia." He blinked, "You mean Mommy?" Zoe nodded. That's her name. You say it in your sleep sometimes. He swallowed. Want to help me leave them at her bench tomorrow? She asked. Nathaniel nodded. Yeah, we'll do that. The next morning, they drove to the botanical gardens where he and Amelia used to walk before Zoe was born. There was a bench with her name on it, one he had donated, quiet and unmarked except for a small brass plate. Zoe arranged the dandelions like treasures, then sat cross-legged beside the bench, humming something under her breath. Nathaniel stood nearby, hands in his coat pockets, feeling the stillness more than the cold. A part of him wanted to share the moment with someone, not just witness it, but let it be seen by someone who would understand the weight of it. By the time he pulled out his phone, the moment had passed. But that night, he sent Emily a message anyway. We visited Amelia's bench today. Zoe brought dandelions. I didn't expect how much that would hit me. Her reply was quiet. It's the small things, that's what grief waits for, not the anniversaries, the dandelions, the shoes, the words we don't even realize we're saying in our sleep. Then, I'm here, by the way, if you ever want company for one of those moments. Nathaniel stared at that last message for a long time. She didn't mean it romantically, or maybe she did, he couldn't tell. What he could tell was this: something was shifting, not quickly, not clearly, but undeniably. The past was no longer something behind glass. It was reaching forward, gently, quietly, reminding him that not all wrong turns stay wrong. Some of them loop back in ways you never expect. It started with a coffee. No fanfare, no rehearsed lines. Just a simple message Nathaniel sent on a rainy Thursday morning after walking Zoe to school beneath a shared umbrella. If you're still open to it, I'd like that company. Coffee, no expectations, just a quiet hour. Emily replied half an hour later. There's a place in Fort Greene I like. No laptops, just conversation and old music. Tomorrow at 11. He stared at the time she proposed. A weekday, middle of the morning. A slot he usually reserved for high-stakes meetings and investor calls. But something about her choosing a time that suited her, not him, felt grounding. Uncompromising in the way that mattered. He typed back, I'll be there. The cafe smelled like nutmeg and old books. It had mismatched furniture and fogged-up windows, the kind of place where people read for hours without being bothered. Nathaniel arrived early, as always, and sat at a corner table with two small chairs. He didn't bring his laptop. He didn't even bring a book. When Emily walked in, the air changed. She wore a green scarf tucked into her coat, and her hair was slightly damp from the rain. There were new lines around her eyes, but her smile, soft, immediate, was exactly as he remembered. Nathaniel, she said, not surprised. He stood Emily. They sat across from each other, the table too narrow to ignore the space between them. I almost didn't come, she admitted, cupping her coffee between her palms. But then I realized I'd be more upset if I didn't than if it was awkward. He let out a breath of quiet agreement. Same. They didn't talk about Zoe right away, or Amelia, or the message that started all of this. Instead, they talked about the city, how much had changed, how much hadn't. They talked about old professors and favorite books, places they used to go when they thought their futures were still wide and undefined. You always knew what you wanted, she said, eyes studying him carefully, even when I didn't agree with it. I thought I did, he said, but wanting something and understanding it are different things. She stirred her coffee, then looked up, and now. He didn't answer right away. Now he woke up thinking about whether Zoe had clean socks, whether her questions had real answers or just needed to be heard. He thought about slow weekends and soft music and what he didn't say out loud when the house went quiet. Now I'm still figuring it out. She smiled gently, that's more honest. They parted with no promises, just a warmth that lingered longer than the coffee. The following week, Emily sent a message late one evening. I was thinking if Zoe ever wants someone to talk to outside her world, I'd be happy to offer that. Not as your old girlfriend, as someone trained for it. Nathaniel stared at the message, torn. He knew what she was offering: professionalism, compassion, boundaries. But a part of him, guilty, protective, flinched. He didn't want Zoe to be a case study. Didn't want Emily to be someone who watched their story from the outside. So instead he replied, "What if we just had dinner sometime? No roles, just people." The pause was longer this time, an hour, then two. Finally her response came. "Okay, but only if it includes pancakes. I want to see if they're as weird as Zoe says." Nathaniel laughed quietly, phone glowing in the dark. When Saturday arrived, he made the pancakes Zoe liked, blueberries, a little cinnamon, too much syrup, and tried not to overthink the fact that Emily was coming over. Zoe helped him set the table, placing a folded napkin at the extra seat. "Is your friend nice?" she asked. "Very," he said. "She knew me a long time ago." Zoe thought about that, like mommy. He hesitated, sort of, but in a different part of my life. Emily arrived with a paperback novel in one hand and a paper bag in the other. "I brought muffins," she said, holding the bag up, "in case your pancakes really are weird." Zoe inspected her critically, then nodded. "You can stay." Breakfast was chaos. Zoe talked nonstop, asking Emily if she liked cats and if she could braid her hair and if she knew how to draw unicorns. Emily, unfazed, said yes to everything. Nathaniel watched them from across the table, his daughter bold and curious, Emily calm but alive with quiet humor, something old and something new stirring in the same space. After Zoe ran off to build a blanket fort, Emily looked at him. "You're a good dad." He shook his head. "I'm trying." "That's what makes you good." They sat in the hush of that statement, not in the romance of it, not yet, just the weight of shared truths and roads long walked. "I kept your letter," she said after a moment. "From college, the one you wrote when you turned down Vermont and chose Wall Street." He looked up. "Why?" She smiled faintly, "Because even though it hurt, it was honest. You said you didn't know how to be soft without giving something up, and I understood that, even if I hated it." He didn't know what to say. "I don't hate it now," she added. They didn't kiss, nothing rushed or dramatic unfolded, but when she stood to leave, she touched his arm gently, deliberately, a touch not of nostalgia but recognition. And when Zoe yelled from the other room, "Miss Emily, do you want to see my fort?" she didn't even hesitate before calling back, "Absolutely." Nathaniel stood still in the kitchen for a moment, heart suddenly heavier and lighter all at once. Something was returning, not the past, but something brave enough to step into the space grief had once hollowed out. Spring came late that year. The city thawed slowly, reluctantly, as if unsure whether it was ready to be soft again. Trees budded in quiet defiance of the cold. Sidewalks gleamed wet with the promise of something new. And in the midst of it, Nathaniel found himself waking up before his alarm, not to check emails, but to listen to the sound of Zoe talking in her sleep. She had started dreaming out loud. Sometimes about pancakes that turned into rockets, sometimes about her mom's old perfume. Once she murmured Emily's name, then whispered, "She laughs with her eyes." He didn't tell Emily that, not at first. Some things he still held close, letting them settle in his chest before sharing. They had fallen into a rhythm now, one that made no claims. Dinner once a week. A walk through Prospect Park while Zoe rode ahead on her scooter, stopping every few feet to point out dogs or worms or oddly shaped clouds. Sunday mornings at the farmer's market where Zoe insisted on picking out a flower for each of them. "You need yellow," she told Emily one day, holding out a marigold, "because your face is too serious sometimes." Emily laughed, full and unguarded. "You might be right." Nathaniel watched them, hands in his pockets, the warmth between them something he hadn't anticipated, something he hadn't dared to imagine since the loss had torn through their lives like a quiet storm. And yet nothing was defined. Emily never stayed the night. She never stepped into the role of anything other than herself. She asked questions gently and listened like it was an offering. She never tried to replace anyone. She understood that healing wasn't a ladder but a tide. One evening, after Zoe had fallen asleep with her face pressed to the window waiting for a late snowfall that never came, Nathaniel and Emily sat on the couch, the space between them quieter than usual. He turned to her, elbows on his knees. I keep thinking this shouldn't be working. She looked over, eyebrows raised. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. We missed so many years. There's so much you don't know, about me, about her, about the version of myself I had to become just to make it through. Emily didn't flinch, she never did. I don't need to know everything, she said softly. I just need to know you now. Nathaniel studied her, the steadiness, the patience, the way she looked at him like she wasn't trying to figure him out, just letting him be. I don't want to mess this up, he said. Then don't. Simple, no drama, no conditions. He reached for her hand. She let him. They sat like that, fingers loosely threaded, as the wind moved through the branches outside, carrying with it the promise of a season just around the bend. Weeks passed, then a month, then another. Zoe started kindergarten in early April, wearing a new pair of sparkly shoes that Emily had helped her pick out, not to replace the old ones, but to walk forward in. Nathaniel walked her to school that first morning, hand in hers, backpack bouncing against her little frame. I'm not gonna cry, Zoe announced, chin up. You don't have to, he said, smiling. You're brave. You too, she replied without looking back. After she disappeared into the classroom, Nathaniel lingered on the sidewalk, staring at the door like it had swallowed a piece of his heart. Emily met him around the corner at a cafe, 2 coffees already waiting. She didn't ask how it went. She didn't need to. She didn't cry, he said, voice quieter than usual. But you did. He didn't answer. She nudged the coffee toward him, cream in it already, the way you take it. He blinked, you remembered. I pay attention. Later that afternoon, Zoe drew a picture at aftercare. It showed 3 stick figures, one tall, one medium, one short, all holding hands beneath a rainbow with too many colors. She handed it to Nathaniel when he picked her up. This is us now, she said. He swallowed. What's Emily doing under the rainbow? Zoe looked at him like it was the silliest question she'd ever heard. She's walking with us. Where else would she be? Nathaniel didn't know how to explain to a 5-year-old that some things take time, that some people come back into your life quietly, not to pick up where they left off, but to help you begin again. That love, when it returns like this, not as thunder, but as a slow burn, asks for patience, not promises. But maybe he didn't need to explain it. Maybe she already knew. That night after Zoe had fallen asleep curled beside her drawing, Nathaniel stood at the kitchen sink while Emily dried dishes beside him. The radio played something low and old, and the rhythm of their small tasks settled between them like breath. He turned to her. Do you think we could ever make this into a life? She didn't smile, didn't rush her answer. I think we already are. And he believed her. Not because everything was fixed, not because the past didn't still press its weight into quiet corners of their days, but because for the first time in years, Nathaniel Cole wasn't moving fast. He was staying. He was learning what mattered. And love, real love, the kind that watches you fall and offers its hand without judgment, had come back to find him, wearing an old green scarf and laughing with her eyes. He reached for her again. And this time she didn't let go.